And I am excited to have Dave Roberts here with us to go over these 5 bills and also answer any questions that you have. Dave is the lobbyist for ASID and IIDA Florida. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A chat box, and we will get to them as we go through the discussion. So go ahead, Dave. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Things are moving quite along here up in Tallahassee, even with all the COVID restrictions that we're having as far as access to the building, the Capitol, and how they're holding meetings. This is essentially the start of the 3rd week of the Florida legislative session, which is generally a 9-week session. So we're about nearing the 1/3 end of the first third of the session. So far, the good news is we're battling another comprehensive deregulation effort in the legislature. As a legislature, they're more worried about the COVID pandemic issues and corresponding budget shortfalls. That's the primary concerns. However, we've got a number of bills that we want to discuss with you and let you know that we're watching to make sure they don't dramatically affect the interior design profession. The first one I'm going to bring up is Senate Bill 344 by Senator Manny Diaz of Hialeah Gardens, and House Bill 471 by Representative Alex Rizzo from Hialeah, who's a freshman. This is the legislative review of occupational regulations. This is also known as a Sunset Act. And what this will do is establish a schedule for the systematic review of occupational regulatory programs to determine whether the program should be allowed to expire, fully renewed, or renewed with modifications. And per the bill, the statute that regulates the registered interior designers, Chapter 481, Part 1 of the Florida statutes, would be repealed on July 1st, 2025, unless renewed by the legislature. So far, we hadn't seen any movement of the bill, and I've been cautiously optimistic. And so what happens is they schedule the Senate bill for a hearing tomorrow morning. So Senate Bill 344 will be heard tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the Senate Governmental Oversight and Accountability Committee. So we'll be participating and watching to make sure it doesn't go any further. The House bill has not been heard, not been agended anywhere. I'm hopeful that this is just a move by the Senate sponsor to get some movement in the bill to give some momentum next session or something of that nature when we're out of the pandemic. And just so I hope everyone understands what that means. So basically, the sunset review is a provision that the legislature will look at it. They'll have a review. The staff will look at all aspects of that regulation or that licensure regulation, or registration, and they'll make recommendations to keep it or to modify it or make some changes to it. There are already a number of professions, especially on the medical side, that are trying to get opted out. And so we'll do likewise, and we'll be watching that. So hopefully we'll just have a hearing tomorrow and nothing else on that. The next bill we're following is HB 55, building design by Representative Toby Overdorf. He's a Republican from Stewart, and the Senate companion on that is Senate Bill 284, building design by Senator Keith Perry of Gainesville, also a Republican. And you're going to hear Senator Perry's name a few times. He's sponsoring a number of the bills that we're following. He's a roofing contractor out of Gainesville, and so he always has a lot of interest in construction and design type legislation. So the original bill, HB 55 by Representative Overdorf, would prohibit local governments from adopting land development regulations that require specific building design elements for single and two-family dwellings unless certain conditions are met. So the bill defines these building design elements to mean like exterior color, type or style of exterior cladding, style or material of roof structures or porches, exterior non-structural architectural ornamentation, the location and the architectural styling of windows or doors, location and an orientation of the garage, the number and type of layout of rooms. So Representative Overdorf has stated that the bills needed to prevent local governments from placing costly design and aesthetic requirements on the building of homes on single lots outside of a development or community area. This bill's been moving along. It's just passed its last committee last week on an 18-5 vote, and it's now been placed on the House calendar for further consideration. A number of these bills I'm talking to you about have a divide between the Republicans and Democrats because they're bills what they call local preemptions. In other words, the state is preempting any of the local regulations or requirements, and the Democrats generally support local municipalities and county governments to regulate and as they see fit with their local constituency versus the state coming in and telling them how to do this. So as you can see, there's been a few, and I think about 4 or 5 on every committee has been opposed to it. They're all Democrats. And we'll see continued probably opposition by some of the Democrats. The Senate version 284, again by Senator Keith Perry, actually was heard in his first committee this morning, and it passed 6-3. Again, the 3 Democrats voting against it. The one interesting thing is Senator Perry amended his bill to further exclude certain dwellings from community redevelopment areas, planned unit developments, and community development districts. So to help further define the areas, and so it's not a very broad brush, more of a little bit more of a fine tuning. While the Democrats were a little bit more inclined to support that, and they want to continue working with Senator Perry going forward. So it's still kind of a work in progress. Like I said, they still have the concerns of the preemption of local regulations or requirements, and his bill still has 2 more committee stops before going forward. Well, I'm sorry, before it could be heard on the Senate floor. Another bill that I know has drawn some interest is House Bill 403 by Representative Mike Giambaldo, a freshman Republican out of Cape Coral, and the House version, the Senate version is 266, Senate Bill 266, home-based businesses by Senator Keith Perry out of Gainesville again. This is home-based businesses, and this provides local governments that they may not enact or enforce any ordinance, regulation, or policy, or take any action to license or otherwise regulate a home-based business in a manner that is different from other businesses in that local government's jurisdictions. So it lays out the criteria to be considered a home-based business, and that these home-based businesses will not only be subject to any applicable business tax or requirements that and where that county or municipality is located. As an example, Representative Giambaldo mentioned that in he's been brought forward that some municipalities may have charged a home-based business an exorbitant fee upwards of $400 to $500 and compared to some more traditional brick and mortar businesses. So this levels the playing field. Again, this is where another preemption question comes in. The opposition to the bill is not only the Democrats, but like the Florida League of Cities, the Florida Association of Counties, many municipalities. They're concerned about the local preemption of the zoning requirements and that they're not specific enough to protect against unintended consequences, such as allowing like vacation rentals, what you know as Airbnb, what local governments have outlawed or placed usurp some of the zoning requirements. So this is an interesting bill that's moving along. It's the House bill made it out of House Commerce Committee last week, basically on party lines with a few switches each way, and it passed on a 14-8 vote, and now it's been placed on the House calendar for consideration. There's been amendments added to it that try to restrict it further. Like you can't have any kind of business that emits smoke or excessive noise, vibrations, smells, uses hazardous chemicals, things of that nature. But again, some of the concerns happen, and this is one of the interesting things. When they added that amendment, it actually, our friends at the Americans for Prosperity, who have always been against this profession and trying to take away any regulation of it, suddenly opposed the bill because they felt like that was too subjective, and that the what example is too much noise? So someone who's woodworking and making cabinets in their garage has loud music, or is listening to talk radio or talk sports, and it's too loud and neighbors complain. Can they come in? Can the local come in and tell them to shut it down or whatnot? So a lot of these questions are happening, and sometimes that happens with legislation. When you try to fine tune it, you start tuning it so much that you develop other problems that you're not aware of. So like I said, the House bill has been moved to the House calendar for consideration. There's possibility it could be on the calendar later this week when they go on the floor on Thursday or possibly next week. The Senate bill, like I said, is 266, Senate Bill 266 by Senator Keith Perry. And he's the one that kind of amended it to try to alleviate some of the concerns about making sure that it's clarified that the home-based business only have 2 resident non-employees or independent contractors. So you couldn't sit there and have 10 people working out of the home, but they're salespeople, but they have to keep coming back towards that resident. The residence has to be a residence first and an office or a business second. And then that he also had an amendment that has to comply with all local regulations related to parking, hours of operations, and any business activities that are conducted outside the primary residence structure and relevant to regarding the use of storage, disposal of corrosive, combustible, or hazardous flammable materials or liquids. So you can see it's still a work in progress, but it's moving along. That bill 266 passed out of that committee on a 6-3 vote, and it's still got 2 more committees moving forward. So we'll be watching to see how that goes. Another bill is House Bill 667, building inspections by Representative James Mooney. He's a freshman Republican out of Key West. And the Senate sponsor of the light bill is, again, our friend Senator Keith Perry of Gainesville. And that bill is Senate Bill 1382, building inspections. So this is a unique bill. What this would require local building enforcement agencies to allow requests for inspections to be submitted electronically. And that is accepted methods could be electronic submission by email, electric fill-in form available on the building department's website, or through a third-party submission management software, or a form that can be downloaded on a mobile device. It clarifies that the government entity with authority to enforce the building code may perform virtual inspections at the direction of the government entity. However, that government entity may not perform a virtual inspection for structural inspections on threshold buildings. And then the virtual inspection is defined as an inspection that uses visual or electronic aids to allow a building official or inspector to perform the inspection without having to be physically present at the job site during an inspection. So here's another piece of legislation that is kind of an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic that, we're all working or have been working from home in many regards. It's starting to loosen up a little bit now. And here's another way that we don't, that you won't have to go to a building office to submit or request if this passes. The other interesting thing about this bill, it provides that a local enforcement agency must refund 10% of the permit or inspection fees if the inspector or building official determines work which requires a permit fails an inspection, and the inspector or building official fails to provide a reason that is based on compliance with the Florida Building Code, the Florida Fire Prevention Code, or local ordinance, indicating why the work failed the inspection within 3 days. This is a bill that's gotten a lot of bipartisan support. In fact, it passed its first House committee by a unanimous 17-0 vote, but it still has two more committees to move forward to make it to the House floor. Similar, the Senate Bill 1382 was approved on its first committee by a unanimous 9-0 vote, and it likewise has 2 committees to move forward. We'll take a water break here because I'm doing nothing but talking. Next bill I'm going to talk about is actually it was 10 minutes before we started on this Zoom call. It just finished up the House Commerce Committee meeting, and one of the bills they were considering was House Bill 735, Preemption of Local Occupational Licensing, by Representative Joe Hardy, of a Republican out of Ocala. And this would expressly preempt the licensing of occupations to the state and supersede any local government licensing of occupations. It would allow any licensing of occupations adopted prior to July 1st, 2021 will continue to be effective for 2 more years, at which time they will expire. And any licensing of occupations authorized by general law exempt from this preemption. So what this is tending to do is try to prevent a lot of what has been brought up, that local jurisdictions or municipalities have been requiring a license for painting, flooring, carpentry, interior remodeling, handyman services, driveway or tennis court installations, decorative stone, tile, marble, granite, or terrazzo installation, plastering, stucco, caulking, canvas awning installation, and ornamental iron installation. Those are the specific ones named in the bill and in the staff analysis. But it does allow the counties to continue to, county and municipalities to issue journeyman license in the plumbing, pipe fitting, mechanical, HVAC trades, as well as electrical and alarm systems trade, which is a current practice in many of those jurisdictions. The licensing of these local journeymen would be exempt from this bill. This bill was approved, I believe, it was approved, but I think the vote was 19-5. With 5 Democrats, not all the Democrats, but 5 voting against it. And this moved through its second committee, and now it's available for consideration to be placed on the House calendar. The Senate companion on this, Senate Bill 268 by Senator Keith Perry from Gainesville, is scheduled, was heard today also, I apologize. And it passed. Pretty much with some concerns again of local preemption, but it also passed. But it has its committee today, and it has 2 more committees of reference before it can move to the floor. It's moving along. These bills are all moving along. These are the ones that are in the design or building area that have some interest, I think, to the interior design profession. As you can see, it's a common refrain of local preemption versus statewide authorization. And while many of these may have some good ideas and are moving, we still don't know. You got it moving on one side in the House. Many of these bills they're ready to be on the House calendar, and we haven't seen as much movement on the Senate side. Doesn't mean that's not going to happen. We just have to watch and see and be a little bit more patient. I'm going to bring up one more bill that's kind of outside the building and construction field. And this may, I was not following it closely for you all early on, but Jacqueline and others mentioned this might be something that you all are interested in. Not thinking outside the box, but this is, you may have been hearing about it. It's HB 15 by Representative Chuck Clemens of Gainesville and Senate Bill 50 by Senator Joe Gruters of Sarasota. And this is both entitled Sales and Use Tax. And basically this is what is being called the Internet Sales Tax. The bill would require out-of-state retailers and marketplace providers with no physical presence in Florida to collect the Florida sales tax on sales of taxable items delivered to purchasers in Florida if the out-of-state retailer or marketplace provider makes a substantial number of sales into Florida. So that, I forgot, I think the threshold is about 100,000 now. It's been moving back and forth, so it wouldn't affect like a small business, but what this is going after the larger companies that have kind of skirted maybe paying the sales tax or having or remitting the sales tax that they may or may not collect. As you may know, the state of Florida is heavily reliant on the state sales tax since we have no state income tax. We derive about 2/3 of the revenue to the state from the state sales tax. That's why tourism is so important also. And this is the interesting thing is this legislation was out of a case, a Supreme Court case, the United States Supreme Court case in 2018 entitled South Dakota versus Wayfair. And everyone knows Wayfair. And that decision opened the door. The state, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of South Dakota and opened the door for states to collect sales tax on online sales. Previously, the company needed a nexus or a physical presence in that state to be able to collect sales tax. But with that ruling, that struck down that standard and opened the door for Florida and many other states to consider it. Florida is one of only 2 states who has not taken advantage of this. 41 other states that have a state sales tax have already. So this would put Florida competitively with most other states. I think Missouri is the only other one that has not. The interesting thing about this late last week, as this was moving forward, I want to say on a Thursday night or a Wednesday night, overnight, or after hours, I should say, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House agreed to this legislation moving forward. And they put an amendment to it that because the legislation is projected to raise over $1 billion, $1 billion in revenue, I think it's 750 million this year and 1 billion next year and 1.2 billion the year after that. They wanted to make sure it was what they consider kind of a revenue neutral, and that the revenue generated went to a not just, so it wouldn't just look like a tax. So they agreed, and it's passed so far, that the revenue generated under this bill would be directed to the Florida's Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund. And since that trust fund has been hit hard with the the layoffs and furloughs recently because of the COVID pandemic, this is a way to create a revenue neutral approach that would avoid an automatic trigger through the unemployment tax increase that's going to be assessed on struggling Florida businesses. So they feel like this is a win-win, that it's a fairness doctrine to the state's retailers and businesses, the brick and mortar, who have been clamoring for years to spread this around all online sales. So the interesting thing, it's passed when this amendment was added, it passed the House Ways and Means Committee last week on a 16-2 vote, with probably the most liberal member of that committee and the most conservative member of that committee both voting against it and everyone else voting for it. It has now been referenced to the House floor. It's on the calendar, House Bill 15, for consideration on Thursday. They will consider that bill on Thursday, what they call second reading, which enables the bill to be amended and questions asked. Then they would roll it over to third reading. It could be heard the following day on Friday or next week, where the debate and the eventual passage or the voting of the bill occurs. Excuse me. The Senate version is already on the Senate calendar and was sitting there when this decision or this agreement came about. So they pulled that from consideration, or what we call temporarily postponed the bill. And that's scheduled to be heard on Thursday also, where it'll be amended to match the House language. And so again, that will likely be heard and amended this week and possibly pass or into next week. So that's a quick wrap up. I don't know how quick it was, but I did a lot of talking there. But does anybody have any questions of these bills or any other pieces of legislation you may have heard about?
Hey, Dave, great. Thank you so much. That was a lot of information to go over. And we appreciate you breaking it down for us. Lisbeth did ask if we would be able to share the name and email addresses of each bill sponsor.
Sure, I can do that, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So in our follow-up, we will make sure to provide that. And then Matthew also had asked in the chat, he joined a little bit late, wanting to do a quick recap with bill numbers at the end. Would you be able to just quickly go over those 5 numbers?
Absolutely. Whenever you're ready, you want to do it now, or you want to take it?
Go ahead. That was the only question that we got.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions, please keep putting them in the chat.
Okay, the first one I talked about, which is the sunset review of all professions, occupations, and the regulations thereof, is Senate Bill 344 by Senator Manny Diaz. And like Jacqueline just said, we'll get the email addresses out for everyone. The House version of that is, where's the House version of that? Excuse me, 1 second. I think it's 471. Yes, House Bill 471, and that is by Representative Alex Rizzo. The next bill I brought up was Building Design, House Bill 55, and the Senate companion is Senate Bill 284, Building Design, and that's by Senator Keith Perry. The next one was House Bill 403, Home-Based Businesses. That's by Representative Mike Gianlombardo. And the Senate companion is Senate Bill 266 by Home-Based Business by Senator Keith Perry. After that was HB 667, Building Inspections by Representative James Mooney, with the Senate companion, Senate Bill 1382, Building Inspections by Senator Keith Perry. Then HB 735, Preemption of Local Occupational Licensing by Representative Joe Hardy. And the Senate companion of that is Senate Bill 268 by Senator Keith Perry. And then the last one, we just spoke about the sales and use tax on, or the online sales, is House Bill 15 by Representative Chuck Clemens and Senate Bill 50 by Senator Joe Gruters.
Awesome. Thank you. We actually had a question that was asked via Instagram by IIDA, and she had asked how these bills affect registered interior designers.
Right now, I don't think, well, the one we have the biggest concern, of course, is the sunset review. That would affect the regulation and the registration of interior designers, because and architects. It drives into 481, Part 1, which, as you all know, license architects and registers interior designers and does the regulation thereof. It would have it could do away with that. It could ignore it and say everything's hunky-dory, it's working great, or they could modify and make further changes to it. So that's the concern of the bill, is that it lays out the systematic review. And again, we would not be under, it would do it in 4 stages, I believe, if I remember right. And so our section would not be up for review until 2025. And so that session, that would probably in all likelihood be the battle that we'd have if we couldn't get out of the bill before that and fight. And that would mean that our section of the statute would just go away on July 1st, 2025, if nothing is done to reenact that statute. So that's the biggest concern about it. The other thing is that even though all these different occupations and professions, and we're talking about medical, we're talking professions, other things, they're already being cherry picked out. So they talk about this being inclusive, excuse me, but they've already said engineers probably won't be in there. They've already said architects won't be in there, and all like the doctors, certain type of physicians, certain type of nurse practitioners, things of that nature. It's a move by conservatives to, again, lower the amount of licensure that's out there and regulation by the state, thinking there's way too much. That you're literally, right before I got on here, when they were talking about House Bill 735, the chairman of the House Commerce Committee, Representative Blazin Golia, who had the bill last year that we moved to a registration, was again talking about there's too many people, where barriers for people getting into the marketplace. These fees are killing people, and that's their whole stance. So we don't want this to become a free-for-all that, oh yeah, we're just going to do away with any kind of regulation or license or registration, and it's a free-for-all. There are libertarian members that we have talked to who say, just have insurance, just bond yourself, and you don't need to be licensed. And there's a problem, then that person or that entity you hurt can just go after your insurance. Well, any of us who's ever been in a car accident know that just doesn't work, because it's 2 or 3 years down the road before you see any recoup, and that's not going to prevent the bad actors or anything out of there. So, that's the important bill that we're really watching. The other ones, the building and design, that's really, I guess, more for a residential interior designer. Limited. It's not a great effect on. It does have some questions about the layout and type of room. So, following that, the home-based business, I think, is probably the biggest one for many of you all. My wife has a home-based business. She's a graphic designer, been working out of the home for 12 years after her and her partners closed up their business and took their clients. So, that's something I think that's a big concern for everybody, and concern in the fact that we want fairness. If you all are being charged an exorbitant amount to have a home-based business for the fee for that, as opposed to a brick and mortar, that's not really right or fair. I can tell you that bill is being pushed by NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, and they're very adamant they want something to pass this year and or next year. I said, is it just the fees that you're looking at more? And I said, no, they believe that there's restrictions hitting people from really operating home-based businesses, and they want to, open that up as much as possible. The building inspections, I think that's unique in that, it's the COVID response that we're allowing a electronic submission of requests for inspections, and they're going to do some of it electronically. That's visually electronically. That's interesting. If that'll go for that virtual inspection, so I can help many of you all. And then the preemption of local licensing, I don't really think that has much effect, but it's one of those areas that we tend to follow a lot of bills that touch in the profession or the construction area, because they can be quickly amended to include 481 or aspects of 481. And so we watch those, as we call them. They can become potential vehicles for harm. And so that's why I bring those up to you. I want you all to be aware of it and see if you think that's a concern that maybe I missed. Again, a perfect example that Jacqueline Elizabeth brought up to me is the sales tax bill. I didn't think outside the box that, you all have to buy products and whatnot, and you don't want to sit there and battle the wayfarers and not have the fair price like they have. It may only be 6 to 7.5% sales tax, but that's still some money that we know people buy online. We all do it for ease and savings. So, that's understandable.
Great.
So that was a long answer to a short question.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Kelly wanted to know who is charging for those fees.
I'm sorry?
Kelly Robinson wanted to know who is charging for the fees you are talking about.
Well, I haven't seen anything specific. It's been anecdotal. I haven't seen any specific. When I say the sponsors have brought up like, hey, this has been charged. We know we're hearing $500 in this municipality or $350 in this municipality. So you're hearing a lot of horribles, but we haven't seen anything specifics yet as to whether that's true or not. They're just using that. They haven't had to prove it, so to speak. Like I said, that's why the bill is kind of moving it forward with, it's kind of an R versus D, Republican versus Democrat. Democrats tend to want to allow the local jurisdictions to regulate. Perfect example, many of you in South Florida may know about this. This is outside the scope, but to give you an example, Key West voters, citizens of Key West have voted to restrict and limit how many cruise ships can come and dock at the port of Key West because of damage to the coral reefs and whatnot. And that actually is a bill going through the legislature that would preempt their ability to set limits on that and open it up. And so that's kind of an overriding theme that's going on this session is preemption bills. And it kind of goes, do you want just the state telling you whatever you want to do? We know Pensacola is totally different from Key West. Miami's completely different from Gainesville. Jacksonville's completely different from Cape Coral, Sarasota. Is that the right way to do it? Or you allow some of your local jurisdictions and the local things that you care more about to occur. So that's the battle they're kind of having. That's kind of an underlying aspect of this session.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I wanted to ask the attendees if anybody has home interior design businesses. Just because of the bills that were being said, I wanted to ask that before asking you, Dave. Yi has a question. Hi, Yi. She says, I just started my own interior design business, and I'm wondering what is the latest news on Florida registered interior designers' ability to sign and seal drawings? Is there a construction dollar limit?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure I can answer that. I think that would be one of you all practitioners that would probably know that better. Um, I don't know. I could try to find out, but I do like Jacqueline, if you could, we can get a survey of people, not so much who is a home-based business, or how many, but is anybody being charged an exorbitant, believe an exorbitant fee, or they believe restrictions are being placed on them to have a client come by and see them or something of that nature. As I talked to some of the lobbyists about the home-based business, I told them we're interested in it. We're not necessarily going to stand up and support it yet, but we're getting information together, and if there is a problem, we will weigh in. But that goes back to Kelly's question: is there is there an actual fee out there that somebody's being charged that's too much? If there are examples of that, please send it our way up here, through you all, and let us know so we can bring that up.
Great. Thank you. And Yi, I believe that we're still able, to sign and seal as long as we're not, affecting anything structurally. I'm just not sure of a construction dollar limit. That's what I'm not sure.
Right. Thank you, Jackie. The same with me. I'm sorry. I should have answered the same way you just did. I'm not aware of a limit on the dollar amount.
But maybe we can look into that if there is one. Another question is, when is the best time to reach out to legislators to voice support or opposition? And what's the best method of contact?
The two best methods are email and a phone call to the district office. So the legislators they're part-time legislature. They're only, paid $29,000 a year. They all have other jobs in all likelihood, but they all have district offices, and they have aides that are up here with them at the Capitol because of constituent issues and things of that nature. Email's the best, and we're going to give you the email addresses to those legislators. You can also call, but I still believe nowadays email is the best way. You can email them at any time. Give them a couple days to respond. In all likelihood, they're going to have their aides look at these things and respond to you. Overall, I think they're being very good about responding back to issues on that. As long as what gets them, and we did it last year, the last few years, is you do the giant blowout of, get all the members to email or call. And we actually had a member when Brian Sukup was in town with me. We met with a senator, and he's like, okay, stop it now. Tell them to stop calling me, stop bugging my office. You have my vote, but you're going to lose it if you don't stop. They're getting overwhelmed. But it is still, they will respond on your concerns, and they want to hear from you, especially in your district, because you're their voter. They're answering to you. They listen to lobbyists because we're supposedly the subject matter experts, or we bring in the subject matter experts to help them. But you're the voter, and they're more concerned about how you feel about certain issues than anything else, because they want your vote next election.
Right. Awesome. We did have a few people say that they are working from home. Kelly had said they moved their architecture interior design business home during COVID. No fees yet, but good to know.
Yeah, I asked my wife the same thing. Are you being charged a fee? She goes, no. I said, what's the bill going like? She said, don't say anything. I said, no, I don't think there is one being charged in this area either, Tallahassee, Leon County, but it may be in South Florida or Central Florida, or who knows. So if there are, It'd be really interesting to find out, and if there are ones that are concerning that seem a little outrageous, that'd be interesting to know too.
Yes. Are there any other questions for Dave? I'm not seeing anything come through, but we'll do a recap. Lisbeth, sorry.
Hi, it's Lizbeth. Let's see here. I'll put my camera on. Hi, everyone.
There you are.
Here I am. I'm here. I actually did have a question, which is a lot of the restrictions that I've encountered for home-based businesses has been by the HOA. Would this bill affect what the HOA's restrictions can be for home-based businesses?
No, and if I didn't mention it, I apologize. The bill would not overreach over HOA or condo association requirements. So that was one thing they specifically put in the beginning. Sorry about that. So the HOA still has standing over those requirements. And I used to live in an area that had an HOA. They allowed home-based business, but you have one car in a driveway, that type of thing. I think actually they required like a side entrance or something of that nature. But yeah, the HOA will still take overall charge of that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, if we don't have any other questions, please, if you think of any questions after the fact, feel free to email VP Advocacy at IIDA sfc.org, and we will be sending a recap to everyone who attended today. And we so appreciate your time, Dave, and for everyone who stopped by.
One quick thing, Jacqueline, if you want to wait to send the recap, maybe and Thursday when I give it to you, kind of an updated one, because what I gave to you last week, it has been, I kind of updated that in this virtual. I haven't given you a new one yet. So maybe we can wait a couple of days and send that one out, because some people are like, well, this doesn't jive with what you talked about. But and also give you the email addresses to those to the sponsors of those bills too. I can do that right away too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.
No problem. Thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye.